Ladies and gentlemen, upon the break of 42k just yesterday, we've gone even higher to something like 44.5k at the time of making this video, which is absolutely exceptional for the gains of the crypto market. We've seen excellent gains in altcoins, excellent gains on Bitcoin. How high can we go? Can we go to 48k? Can we go higher than that? How high can we go without damaging the cyclical structure? And is buying here logical? Is this a place you should be looking to take profits at? You know, these are the big questions we're going to try and answer today. These are the big questions I'm going to try and give you my perspective on today. It's a long video, but it's action-packed. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of points to make. So I highly recommend you check it out. Watch the whole video all the way through. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're interested. Guys, let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, Bitcoin has surged even higher, above 42k to something like 44.5k. I shouldn't say something like, that's the reality, 6% higher than our previous high at 42, which we found brief resistance on in the short term. Unfortunately, the short-term charts are kind of undecipherable at the moment. We can't really analyze a short-term chart like this given the time frame. There's not enough evidence of any structure forming at the moment. I can see a very strong horizontal support forming on the short term. However, that's sitting at like 43.5k. That makes sense. You can look at that level, potentially take a short if we drop down below that level to something like 42k or something like this yellow ascending line, which actually stems all the way back from our consolidation. Not consolidation actually, but from the stem of this move from December 1st. You can look for something like that if you want to. But ultimately, I'm not really focused on ultra short term right now because it's very clear, and I know this sounds like a cop-out almost, but it's very clear that Bitcoin's not following short-term TA right now. Okay, TA is not being followed, of course, on a 70 to 80, what is it? A 79% move to the upside with no correction whatsoever. That's not something that follows TA, okay? And if you look at the 15-minute chart, you look at what we formed yesterday, we had a structure here at 42k, we had a ascending channel formation, and just like nothing, we broke to the upside above it. Obviously, it's great news for the price, but that's not TA. That's not what TA is meant to do. So this is just a reoccurring trend on Bitcoin that we've seen over the entirety of 2023 with short-term TA just constantly being denied, and just the price continuing upwards regardless of the circumstances, or not dropping downwards in these two cases, regardless of the circumstances. It's not surprising to me. Okay, I'm not surprised by this. In fact, we've predicted this very well. Upon the break of 38.5k, I was the first one to say that Bitcoin was targeting 42k and potentially even 48k. I still stand by those targets. I still stand by the fact that Bitcoin could be testing 48k before starting a correction. I'm not naive to that reality. That's something I've said for weeks on end, because we're looking at the next major resistance zone above 40k, which we've broken now. It's 48k, guys. It's 48k, right? There's nothing in between on a long-term level. 48k is the next major resistance zone. I'm not at all opposed to going to 48k before correction. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, given the fact that this move has moved up so much in such a short period of time. We could just be exhausted before then, but I certainly think it's possible. But what I will say is this: I think it's very unlikely that Bitcoin breaks 48k without correction. If Bitcoin goes higher than 48k without correction at this point in the market cycle, that's when we get into saying things like, okay, maybe the cyclical structure is about to be actually broken here, because that would be obscene. It really would be. You don't break two macro resistance level 3, you don't break 32k, which is a macro resistance level, you don't break 40k, macro resistance level, and you don't break 48k, it's 3 levels without correction. It just does not happen in a normal market. So that would be obscene, okay? That's truly would be obscene. That's not what the TA suggests at all. The TA does permit a move up to 48k before correction. This is something I've said over and over and over again. And this is something that I'm not buying even in wake of. As I said, go back to a few days ago when we broke out of 38.5k. Watch my video. Watch what I said in the video. I said, upon the break of 38.5k, I said we will go upwards and we will touch things like 42 and potentially 48. That's not something that is, I've had to backtrack. That's just the reality of what I said. I also said, and this may surprise you, I also said, I'm not bloody buying here. Do you know why I'm not buying here? I'm not buying here because I trust the 4-year cycle. That's the fundamental reason. I know there's a lot of narratives right now around ETF, around how Bitcoin's going to break 100k in the next 3 minutes, right? The fact of the matter is, ground yourself in reality. What is the reality that everyone seems to ignore every time there's a pump or a dump on Bitcoin? 4-year cycle. This is the reality people ignored when they were calling for 3k. This is the reality people ignored when they were calling for 300k in the last bull market. This is the reality people are ignoring now because we've seen a bit of upwards price action. It's the truth of the situation. 4-year cycle on Bitcoin. What does it say? It means every 4 years after the halving, Bitcoin sees a bull market. Have we seen the halving? No. When will we see the halving? April. It's not April yet. We're not going to see the bull market yet. That's the reality. That doesn't mean we can't go up. Not at all. We went upwards massively in the last part of this, in the previous cycle between January 2019 and between May 2019. 340% gain. That was before the halving. That's fine. That wasn't a bull market though. That was merely a mid-cycle pump, just like what we're seeing now from 15K. And this is something that I'm saying, and I'm claiming this as someone who bought Bitcoin at 17K publicly on this YouTube channel, 18K, right? So let's not, twist the reality. The reality is I'm the most bullish long-term Bitcoin person you can find on a reasonable basis because I believe in the 4-year cycle theory, but I'm also understanding that I can't just fall into every single bullish trap like all these people on YouTube and Twitter are doing. There's people out there on YouTube and Twitter saying that, oh, Bitcoin's entered the bull market. This is the second phase of the bull market. Well, what do you mean by bull market? Because we know historically that bull markets only occur after the halving. That's something we know for a fact historically. That's not an opinion. That's a trend. And we know that's not the case right now. So I'm not satisfied by these theories around the ETF, how it's going to send Bitcoin into a preemptive super cycle or some shit. I've heard it, but excuse my French. I've heard that before. I've heard these claims before. I heard it in the last cycle. I heard it in 2017. It didn't happen in either of them. I heard the claims about how recession was going to drag Bitcoin down in 2021, 2022. It didn't play out. I heard the same thing in 2018. Bitcoin was going to die. The bubbles popped with the altcoin season there. It's going to die. We're going to go to zero. It didn't play out. COVID-19, another one. I heard Bitcoin was dead when COVID-19 occurred. None of them play out. The fact of the matter is you have to trust the charts until the charts are invalidated. The charts say this. The charts say that we're in a 4-year cycle on Bitcoin and we will see the bulk of the bull market, or we see the actual bull market after the halving. We're not at the halving yet. And hence we have to expect that this move is not a bull market. And hence we have to expect that this move, as per TA as well, will correct at some point, because a 79% move without correction is obscene even by bull market standards. Okay, you can't justify from a position of charts, data, and analysis buying here. You can justify buying here from a position of emotion, which would be greed, and speculation, baseless speculation, may I add, regarding ETFs, which is gambling. Okay, so think about which one's more logical there. It's quite simplistic in my opinion. Now, what I'm saying is this. I'm saying I've got an average price of Bitcoin of 21K. I wouldn't be buying here for any reason, just with that alone. But I'm also saying that I think Bitcoin could possibly go to 48K, but from there, I think it will reject. I think we'll see a significant correction. Say the correction is 20%, which is very reasonable. That will take us back down to something like 38K, something like 40K, which would be 10% lower than where we are right now, and which will be exactly where we were at the breakout of this level. So the entire breakout we're seeing would be irrelevant if you bought after the correction. That's what I'm saying. And let me tell you something right now. Even if that correction doesn't occur, and even if Bitcoin enters a super cycle, which is just ridiculously speculative and with no actual data supporting that at all, there's only words that support that, no data. Even if that occurs, I will stand my ground and say this was the best possible decision I could have made at the time, the most logical decision I could have made at the time. If you gamble consistently over and over and over again, eventually you'll be right. That doesn't mean the way you gambled was correct. And that's the reality of the situation here for Bitcoin. But moving into this deeper, okay, what do I mean by correction? What is my evidence for correction? First and foremost, there's no denying that Bitcoin's been bullish. I've made ridiculous amounts of money on my Bitcoin bag that I have a massive Bitcoin bag of, by the way, since this move upwards. 70% move upwards, 80% move upwards is absolutely phenomenal. Everyone's made money. Let's not kid ourselves, it's been excellent. But the fact of the matter is, we have to expect correction. It's not bull market yet. Where that correction will come from, potentially 48K. This is something I've been saying over and over and over again. But with that said, even with that bearish implication there, it's not, it's not ridiculous to be happy about what's happened here. We've broken above a descending channel formation. That's just amazing stuff because that was the last bearish indicator we have on Bitcoin. But if we're looking at the monthly chart, this is what I'm really concerned about here, right? I'm not necessarily concerned, but it's something that I'm definitely watching. The monthly chart Ichimoku cloud baseline. This is an interesting one, right? The red line on the screen here, you can see. It has been a dividing line on Bitcoin between bull market and bear market. When we've lost this level, we've entered bear markets. When we've gotten above it, we've entered bull markets, right? It's been very, very interesting on Bitcoin. And all you need to do is look at the screen to see that, right? 2017, we held it throughout the entirety of the bull market. We lost it in 2018. We went downwards throughout the entirety of the bear market. We rejected from it in 2019 after the mid-cycle pump. We went downwards until the halving. After the halving, we entered a bull market. Support, lost it, went downwards. acting as resistance right now. Now, what's interesting about this is we are at the same period of time we were in 2019. Okay, and what I mean by that is we're pre-halving. In 2019, during this pump, we were pre-halving. The halving was the year after. We're in the same period of time. Pre-halving, the halving's next year. Okay, next year's getting closer and closer, but the halving's still next year in a mid-cycle pump. Okay, and we're reaching the same level as we reached here and rejected from. Now, you might think, oh, but we're crossing above that level. Well, we're crossing above that level, but if you're looking at 2019, we wicked above that level a 31% move. If we wicked upwards to 48K above this level, that would only be a 12 to 13% wick. What I'm saying is that there is definitely a scenario here in which Bitcoin goes upwards to 48K, or not, or just rejects from here. It doesn't have to be 48K, but it certainly could be. Goes upward to 48K, rejects from 48K, right? Comes back downwards and closes the monthly below 42K, sees its mid-cycle correction before the halving, and then after the halving, it goes upwards and sees its regular bull market start to begin. That is something that not only do I think is possible, but I'm leaning towards saying that is the most reasonable thing I think we could see. I wouldn't say it's hard to say something like that is likely because it's not a trend. There's no trends like this. There's no trends surrounding this. It's not like every cycle we've rejected from this level in the mid-cycle run. We broke above it, for example, in 2016. There's no trends regarding it, but it certainly is something that would be reasonable in my opinion. It's something that would be logical in my opinion to see. Now, speaking of that 2019 level, okay, if we're looking at weekly chart RSI, we can see at that 2019 level, we rejected from this red line on the RSI at 79. We rejected from that red line, went down and broke below our RSI yellow support line. We could do the same thing here. Yeah, okay, we're above it right now, but the weekly candle's not closed yet. We could reject from this red line, drop below this RSI yellow line, see the correction, go upwards after the halving. That's something that is definitely on the table. Again, it's not something that I see as likely or unlikely. It's not something I can say is likely or unlikely because it's not a trend, but it's certainly something that I would observe to be reasonable if it did occur. You know, as for when Bitcoin will go upwards massively, you know, we've made it very clear, right? After the halving, that's something we've made very clear. I'm not just making that up. That's just generally what's has occurred in the past, in the last 2 or 3 cycles here. So if we're looking at when Bitcoin breaks all-time highs, this is a chart we've looked at quite a lot, right? When does Bitcoin break above its all-time high from the previous cycle? Okay, well, we have a little bit of a trend forming here. I wouldn't say it's a trend yet. It's not necessarily something that's make or break. It's not like if we go above 70K before the halving, the whole cycle is falling apart. It just would be a little bit concerning for the cyclical trends, right? Because we have a trend here forming that says that after the all-time high peak, it takes roughly 1,100 days to get back to that level and break above it. That happened in 2017, it happened here in 2020, and if it happens again this time, we wouldn't be reaching 70K and breaking above it until November next year. So, when I think about how Bitcoin is going to have the road to the most success possible, what I actually think about is Bitcoin maintaining a degree of predictability. I'm not thinking, oh, Bitcoin needs to go to $1 million USD, because that's irrelevant. What I want is maximum predictability from Bitcoin, because if we have maximum predictability from Bitcoin, and we know that Bitcoin controls the market, we hence have maximum predictability on altcoins, and we can extrapolate that to make maximum returns on altcoins, knowing exactly where Bitcoin is going and when it's going there. I do not want Bitcoin to go to $1 million USD in 2 days, right? I know it sounds counterlogical, but I actually don't. I want Bitcoin to follow the 4-year cycle for as long as humanly possible. Right? And if we break it this time, cool. Okay, but the fact of the matter is this is a trend. This is the best trend we have, and it's something we have to follow like it's gospel until it ends for that reason. I do not think that breaking above 70K before the halving would invalidate the trend by any means, but it certainly would seem a little bit preemptive, and it certainly wouldn't be great. I'm also not overly convinced, by the way, and I know this is going to be controversial. I've said it in the last few videos. I'm not overly convinced, right, that the ETF approval is going to lead Bitcoin to go upwards even further. I'm just not. Long term, it's going to be bullish. Yes, more capital is coming into the market. I understand that. I understand more capital is going to come into the market. I'm not dumb. But I also understand that, look, there's a reason why you see a 79% move to the upside in 2 months without significant correction, okay? And it's not just TA alone. This move is a direct result of the hype around the ETFs. This is a price in of the ETFs. I mean, let's be honest, it is, right? So this move is pricing in the ETFs. A 79% move seems like a pretty good price in for a Bitcoin spot ETF. So at some point we have to be reasonable and say, how high can Bitcoin really go off this one narrative in such a short period of time without correction? I'm not convinced that the ETF will be an event that will pump the market massively. You've got to remember, the markets are forward-looking. If the ETFs are seen as likely, which they are, seen as basically certain, if they come out and they're approved, that's not going to lead much to much more price action. It's the rumor that leads to price action. I'm of the belief personally that if we don't see a correction before the ETF release, right, the ETF release will be a sell the news event. That's my personal opinion. We can dissect that a bit more as we get closer to date. It's still a month away, but I'll say that again. If we do not see a correction before the ETF released, right, before the ETF is approved, I should say, I'm very much convinced the ETF will be a sell the news event. Now, if we start going downwards, for example, in a week from now, say we reach 48K, and then we correct downwards and we're down here at 40K by the time the ETF comes out, by the time the ETF is approved or something like that, say 42K, and then it's released, okay, cool. I can see Bitcoin going upwards from that because we've seen the correction and the anticipation's there. We can go upwards again. But if Bitcoin just remains in this upwards trend, right, all the way until January 10th, and Bitcoin's all the way up here, and it's seen a gain without correction, right, by January 10th, a gain without correction of 92%, I'm not convinced that that will lead Bitcoin to go upwards further when it's approved. I think that will be a sell the news event. I seriously do. So yeah, that's something to consider as well. But again, it's irrelevant talking about it now, and it is just speculation to a certain extent, which I've criticized heavily in this video, right? I've criticized speculation heavily in this video. I'm very much an opinion. I'm very much a believer in finding the objective data wherever it's possible, finding the objective trends wherever they're possible, and extrapolating them to the current price action. Speculation is mandatory in a market like this, but it's certainly not preferable. And when it comes to guessing as to whether the ETF will be a sell the news event or will pump on release, that's speculative, and that's not something I want to fall into doing. You've got to trust the charts for the most part. And I think, although there is a reasonable chance these ETFs could be sold in news event, it is speculation at the end of the day. But yeah, look, it's worth dissecting, and I'm kind of running myself in circles here. I've been talking for a long time, had a long day, but I will leave you there. I'll just quickly conclude what I said in this video. I've spoken about how Bitcoin has gone upwards to 44.5K. It's gone upwards even further. That's perfectly reasonable. It's not something to be worried about. As a bull, certainly it's something to celebrate for sure. But as someone who is potentially on the sidelines right now, I don't know why you'd be on the sidelines right now. You should have some sort of positioning in the market. I mean, it's ridiculous to be on the sidelines this late in the cycle, but say you are for some reason, or you have capital you didn't put into the market on the break, I don't think that's something to be concerned about. I think you did. Personally, me personally, I think that was the logical move. I think we could go as high as 48K, but I think from there, we would probably be seeing a rejection if we did go as high as there. I think the reasonable move, based on TA right now, in my opinion, would be a rejection from either here or 48K. That's the reasonable move. I don't think that there's much steam left in the tank. That's my personal opinion. And yeah, I could speak for a lot longer. I could run myself in circles for a lot longer. But I think basically what I want to be waiting for is short-term developments, getting some short-term structures going. We don't have that right now, so there's not much to talk about from that perspective. So I apologize if I've repeated myself a few times in this video. Again, big day. Thanks for watching regardless. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you want to do so. Bitget and Bingx exchange, if you're looking for an exchange to trade on, to get very low trading fees, to be secure on, they've never been hacked before, they've got very low trading fees, these are the ones for you. Bingx is global non-KYC, and Bitget is global except for the USA. So choose either of these ones, based on your geographical preferences, for example, or your geographical location, I should say. They're both very good, and they both have my referral links down below for 15% trading fee discounts. We then have the Crypto Academy. If you want to learn how to trade, this is the place you can do it. We've got our course here in university-style format with slideshows, videos, worksheets, the whole 9 yards, teaching you how to trade, essentially. We also have the VIP group on Telegram. Basically, the VIP information results group on Telegram shows you altcoin trading signals, right? Every 2 days. So entry, stop loss, targets, everything you kind of need there. The pricing information, the free trial information, and the results are all transparently put on this free to join group. And from there, you can see if you actually want to join the real group. So guys, check all of that out. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Cheers.